Joel Grimes here again with another start to finish tutorial. We're going to look at doing a beauty headshot. And there's a lot of ways to do this. Now, if you've heard me in the past talk about lighting, I have this one saying that I always repeat. Again, the larger your modifier or your source is in relationship to your subject, the softer the light. So if I take a 22-inch beauty dish and let's say I run it 10 feet from my subject, I'm going to get a fairly harsh light. Now as I bring that light in, it's going to get softer and softer. So if I take a 22-inch beauty dish and run it about, say, 2 feet from my subject, that's going to create a pretty soft light. And what it also does is it kind of narrows the cheekbones a little bit because my source is closer and it has to cut along the sides of the cheek. So if I take, say, a 5-foot modifier and run it at 5 feet or maybe 6-7 feet, I get a similar look in terms of softness, but because the light's backed up, it doesn't have that sort of cut along the cheeks. So if you have a model that maybe is a little bit full in the face, if you take a beauty dish, run it in closer, you're going to be able to hollow the cheeks a little bit. So that's number one. So I love to use a beauty dish in about 2 feet from my subject, even sometimes a little closer, but we're going to look at how I sort of approached Hannah with this headshot, and you'll see the beauty dish is probably maybe 2.5 feet. So if you bring it in and say it looks a little too soft, you can always back it out a little bit. Now, if you notice, I have put a fill card underneath her about chest level, and so that's bouncing light back. Now that's going to soften the light also. So I go back to my lighting. The bigger the source in relationship to the subject, the softer the light, and also how much bounce or fill that I have coming into the scene will also soften the light. So the more fill I have, the softer it gets, or the closer the fill is to the subject. So that's one thing to consider. Now I like to use a piece of foam core, and there's some kind of really neat stuff out there. The eye lighter is another thing that Westcott has. It's kind of a neat thing. It's silver, so it's going to create a lot of bounce back. So, but a white's going to be a little bit softer, a little bit flatter. I say flatter, but not quite as crisp. And so that's a good choice. And it's cheap. It's, you know, it's just a piece of foam core I get at an art supply store. So how far that piece of foam core in will determine how much fill I get. And so also the angle. Sometimes you can angle even the beauty dish. You tilt the beauty dish down a little bit, it'll bounce a little bit more up. So I like to fine tune that. But you can do that by looking at the back of your monitor because you are the artist. What's most important is your vision. What do you like? And so that's what I do. I keep moving things until it goes into what I like as an artist. So that's number one thing, is what's your vision? But as a rule of thumb, take, and I say this as a rule of sort of general rule, take the modifier that you have. So if it's 24-inch modifier, start at about 24 inches from your subject. If it's a 3-foot modifier, back it up a little bit, start about 3 feet from your subject, 5 foot, 5 feet, 7 foot, 7 feet. And that's a good, I think, starting point to say, how's my light looking? Now, one last thing before I sort of wrap this up in terms of before we get to show you behind the scenes. As I raise my beauty dish up, or any light source, the shadows under, let's see, the eyes, the nose, the lips, the lip here, and the chin are going to get exaggerated. So the higher I move the farther I move it from, say, the fill card or that base where I have straight up, the more shadow I'm going to get, good or bad. As a general rule, and this is something that nobody told me, and just over time I thought, if you take and make that shadow too long to where it comes down and actually touches your lip, I think you've gone too far. And you'll see that if you go too high, things start to look like, you know, the shadows get too exaggerated. So the fill card will help, but I'm just saying as a general rule, you don't want your shadow to go maybe more than halfway between the nose and the lip. So that's just, so I raise that beauty dish up or that light source up and down until I get the shadows the way I want. So if you go and back your light source up, say it's 10 feet away, you got to really raise that light source up to get the shadows to start to elongate. So when you're saying close, it doesn't take much. Even 3-4 inches can make or break the overall look of the shot. So be very careful on where you place your light. Now, obviously, you can't shoot through your light, so you have to go to where you can clear your lens. And if that's the case, if you drop it down, you say, gosh, I wish I could go a little bit further. That's when I switch to a bigger light source, like a 5-footer, and put it behind my head. And say, get 5 feet behind me, or from the lens, drop it behind me. That way the light kind of blasts around me and gets underneath the eyes, the nose, and the lips and the chin. So that's one solution. But right now, I just wanted to let you know that the positioning the overhead light is very important. How much fill I have is very important. And you'll see me, sometimes I'm kind of just slightly moving the light up and down to kind of get the look I want. So let's go from here. I'm going to show you about 3 minutes of behind the scenes, and then we'll go from there into Photoshop and how I retouched the image. All right, here we are on the post-processing side, the retouching side of things. And I happen to work out of the Adobe RAW converter, or Adobe RAW in Bridge. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Command R, which is go to Camera Raw. Let's go back to default. This is how I would normally, it saved the last settings so from this image, but I'm going to start from scratch here. I'm going to pull the shadow detail to the right, so that pulls out a little bit of detail underneath the neck here. I'm going to end up duplicating, having 2 layers that I'm going to blend together. So what I want is to have this image come over a little bit flat. And so by bringing out the shadow detail, I'm going to preserve that, take the contrast to the left. Now remember these settings here, I've just pushed it over here to, what is it, around -50, 60, whatever. You don't need to write those down, because my point is that every image is going to be a little different. So don't go exactly to this. I might pull the whites up just a little bit here. I'm going to build contrast later, so I got to be careful with my contrast. I'm going to leave it as shot. I'm going to, if we click down here at the bottom here, you can see that I'm in the color space is Adobe RGB. You could go to ProPhoto, which some people do. I happen to stick with Adobe RGB. However, I do want to open it as a smart object. So I have that clicked. And 16-bit, that's very important. Don't want 8-bit. You're going to lose a lot of detail by doing that. And so this is a good place to start. So I'm going to say OK, and it opens it as a smart object in Photoshop. I'm still tied to raw. It's like mama with the umbilical cord. I'm still tied to mama. This gives me some great options because I'm going to duplicate this layer by right-clicking and going New Smart Object via Copy. And I'm going to take this, double-click on it, and open it back up in RAW. And I'm going to take and convert this to black and white, and it's going to now I'll have one image above this black and white and one image color below. So let's do this. We're going to go over here to the HSL/grayscale, convert to black and white. Here I have an opportunity to play with the skin tones. So we're going to move the orange a little bit to the right. The yellow kind of seems to affect the hair, so let's pull a little detail out of the hair, not much. And I don't want to go too far here. Sometimes I do. I'll really push this a little bit, but on this, I'm not going to go too far. We're just probably right about there. Now again, I'm not locked into this because if I hit OK, it's going to come over here and make that conversion. And if I'm not happy, I can go back. I can double click and go back. But I'm going to make it into or add a blending mode here, which I'm going to start off with luminosity. Now let's take and unclick that. You'll see that it does, in fact, lighten the skin. And I'm going to duplicate that layer, Command J, and we're going to take that and we're going to go to soft light. And this is where it builds contrast. So we're going to go and feather that back, maybe about 50%. And let's just take and turn off the luminosity one for a second. That smooths it out a little bit. That builds contrast, and that's about kind of what my vision in camera looked like. And so by having that black and white layer gives me a chance to fiddle with the skin tones. So if I want to go a little lighter, I could in fact double click here, go back to my black and white and push that a little bit more, see what happens here. And hopefully that'll smooth it out just a little bit more. Not much, because there it went. Just a tad. I think that's a good place. So I have a choice here. I can either I can flatten these layers, or I can do a stamp by going Shift, Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac, Command E. And that just makes a snapshot of everything below. But I want to preserve my RAM, so I'm just going to say flatten, because I think I'm ready to move on. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's take and do a little bit of liquefy. So we're going to go over here to liquefy, and there's a few little things I want to fix. Not much. She looks pretty good. The hair, I got to fix a few things. So I'm going to go over here to my brush, which is the Freeze Mask tool, and I want to make sure I don't want to touch her face at all. Okay, I don't want to adjust that at all, and I don't want to lose the top of the frame of the background here, so I'm going to take that mask along there. So then I go back over to the Forward Warp tool, and now what I can do is I can adjust the hair a little bit here to kind of fit a little bit cleaned up. Be careful you don't go too far, because it does move pixels around. And that kind of stuff there I can fix later, Photoshop, but I want to just push that in a little bit there. I'll push her ear in just a fraction. Let's go up here and push that down. And again, this is all subject to your vision as an artist. There's a little bump on her shoulders there. I'll fix that. Apart from that, let's just say go. I might want to just that little bump on her nose. So let's do that again. We're going to go to liquefy. And when it comes to moving the nose, typically you want to be very careful that you don't create a nose job on a model And again, she's got she's beautiful features, but just that little bump seemed to stand out there. And so I think that's a good fix on there. All right, so that's pretty much everything I'll do with the Liquify. I'm good to go from there. So we're going to go and we're going to start doing retouching on her skin. And let me do this first, because I noticed that when I'm going to do frequency separation here in a minute, but it seems like when I do the frequency separation that the really big moles don't tend to get picked up, and I'll show you how that is in a minute. But let's go 50% on the flow, 100% on opacity. We're going to go normal current layer, and we're going to make sure we have, maybe hardness just a little bit on the soft, or not totally soft, but just a little bit toward the middle of the hardness. And we're going to go out here and we're going to click on the option key here to stamp it, and we're just going to clean up these big ones, okay? And when I'll use frequency separation here in a minute, and it does pick up a lot of this, but some of the bigger moles, we'll leave that one there. I'll show you what that looks like with frequency separation. All right, so that has let's see if there's any bigger ones I've missed over here. Maybe we'll take this one here, fix that. And here's a big scar. Let's take care of that. And I kind of move in from different angles here, make sure that's, and she's got some redness in there. We're going to fix all that. All right, so let's go back down here. We are going to duplicate the layer twice. So Command J, Command J. 2 layers. The bottom layer I'm going to name low. Top layer I'm going to name high. And I'm going to unclick the top layers to show you. And I've built the action button for these, so I don't have to do this every time. We're going to go over here to Filter. We're going to go to Noise, Dust and Scratches. And you can see it came up as a radius of 15, because that's where I left it last time. And that's kind of what I do, is pretty much leave it at 15 radius. And you can see that it smooths the skin out here. Obviously, we're not going to retouch in the eyes there, but we're really being concerned about the skin part, so that looks pretty good. We're going to check the high layer again and activate it or highlight on it. We're going to go to Layer. No, we're not. We're going to go to Image, Apply Image. And we're going to go to Subtract. We're on the layer part here, we're going to go to Low. And it defaulted here, because I've said it before, to Scale 2 and Offset 128. And do not check Invert. If you were going to do Invert, you could also do Add. And then you would have to do Invert. And I've seen that. I've seen some retouchers do that, but I'm just going to leave it the simplest way here possible. And you can see that it's like a high pass looking effect here, if you've ever worked in high pass. We're going to say OK, and then we're going to set the blending mode to linear light. Now, what should happen here is that I now have no effect by applying these two together. So if I take it apart, I have an effect. If I take that off, there's an effect. But putting the two together, there's no effect. Should be about what was my original look. And I think it is. So if you have a problem there where it looks, either really sharp or too soft, then one of these is you've applied too much on one of these. So let's now group that. So I'm going to take my Shift key, I'm going to highlight both of these, and I'm going to go Command G. That's going to group it. And that's going to be my main skin. Let's call this skin. Okay. And then above this, I'm going to make an adjustment layer of black and white. And I'm going to pull the red channel to the right. So I'm going to pull up every flaw. Now, hopefully, my model isn't watching me do this, because it doesn't make her very attractive. But this is just for a reference, to get all the flaws in her skin to really pop. It makes it easier for me to do my retouching. I'm also going to make a dodge and burn layer above this. So Shift Command N, and I'm going to set the blending mode to overlay. I'm going to check mark the fill overlay with a 50% gray and say, okay, so this is going to be my dodge burn layer. So that pretty much sets me up now. So I'm going to reopen up my skin, my 2 layers here, and I'm going to go into high pass, or not high pass, but the high layer here. And I'm going to go over here to my healing brush tool. Now what I've done is, if you look, I have set the, instead of being completely a round brush, I've set the angle and the roundness to be sort of elliptical so that I can, it'll pick up the tones around a little bit better. And again, this is just something you don't have to do, but I saw someone do this once and then I thought this is pretty cool and it worked out great. So it's something that you can also not do. But basically I am set, again, with the healing brush tool. And let's go back up here. You see it's was defaulted to multiply. I'm going to show you why I do that in a minute. But let's go to normal, current layer. And let's now go in here and we're going to start basically, again, like I do with the stamp tool. I'm going to pick up around and then paint. And you can see it didn't take everything away from that because it's a kind of a big spot. So that's, again, probably with my stamp tool I should have done that. And these I probably should have done too. I can go back and do that. But let me show you what happens when you come up here. Watch this. It's really kind of magical. I can now pick up all these little flaws and it's just seamless. Now if there's a spot that you go over and it doesn't quite get it, remember that, again, I can go back with the stamp tool and fix it, but this is going to be a good starting point for me to make a pass here over the skin and really clean up. And my goal is to keep as much texture as possible in the original skin so that it doesn't look like a mannequin. And I gotta confess that often I overdo it because it's just one of those problems that we have as retouchers that we don't know when to stop. And I'm guilty of it. And I look back at some of my images and I think, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? And one of the things you might do is take a break, or walk away from your image, and sometimes if you sleep on it, that helps. But you can see how smooth the retouching here is. So what I do is I kind of make a pass, then come back, and other things will pop up. Now she's got, you can see there's a lot of little bumps on her forehead, and of course they're being exaggerated by the black and white. But we're gonna fix the best we can. I'm gonna show you how I can get rid of a lot of these. So I'm gonna make a pass here. Sometimes what happens is you can go down here, make your stamp here, and then come back. And it's going to pick up the skin down there. That didn't work so well. Let's not. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. When I do this, I usually work at a pretty high speed and I'm seeing things work or not work and I'm immediately adjusting. And again, everyone's skin is a little different. And this is quite a bit of retouching here that needs to be done on her skin, and which is a good example of what you might have to come across. Sure, her skin looks great down here, but anyway, so I'm going to take the big ones, the ones that are sort of the most distracting. So right along here we can see some big ones. And I'm going to show you a little trick that I learned that I have not seen anyone else do here. And that is, once I get the sort of the biggest ones, let's try down here for a second. Let's just see what happens. Oh, that one picked it up. So sometimes it works really good. And then sometimes it just doesn't want to get rid of the whole bump. So I'll come back with this stamp tool. So let's see what happens when we go up here. Not too bad. I'm going to have to come back. Now I almost guarantee this one will not work. I missed this. Let's see what happens. Yeah, see, it just doesn't want to disappear, which is fine. Because we want this effect really to get us the overall little teeny ones here that if I use the stamp tool, it's going to be too much. All right, so let's go over here and I'm going to take and go to multiply. Set my blending mode on my brush to multiply. Now watch what happens here. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to come along here. And it, again, kind of does the same thing, only about 50% of the effect, but it smooths it out. You got to be careful. Smooths it out, and it kind of works a little bit in bigger patches. So let's just kind of come along here. Let's see. Now, because I don't want to run this tutorial too long, I got to be careful. Let's try this down here. We're going to pick up down here. Let's see what happens when we do that. Ooh, see, that's pretty nice. So that's starting to work in getting those bumps to start to disappear a little bit. Again, we are in the black and white mode, which is exaggerating all the flaws. So let's take a look what it's looking like here. Not bad. We can still see them, but if I come along here like this, it starts to clean those up. And I've got another little solution here I'm going to show you in a minute that's going to help get rid of that. So I'm just kind of going along in here. And again, be careful that you don't do it in too big of steps. You want to just work it in small increments. And to do a real good beauty retouch, you can't do it too quickly. And again, this is a little bit more of a problem than, say, maybe someone who doesn't have quite this little roughness up here. All right, let's take a look back at our black and white here. It's getting better. We still got some problems. So let's go down to the low layer. We're going to go to the lasso tool, and I'm going to apply a blur to this whole section up here. And I've got my feathering set to 15 pixels. Might do 7 to 15, somewhere around there. I'm going to go to blur, so filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and you have to determine what works best here. So I'm just going to start running it across. Let's just say maybe right about 50 or 60. So it's not going to take everything out, but let's take a look at this. We're going to deselect. Let's go to my history, and let's just see what happened here. It did clean it up a little bit, smooth it out just a little bit. Still little bumps there, but if we take the black and white off and we go down to our level here, it's not too bad. Again, I could spend some time going in there and really cleaning up every little bump, which I think I did on the original that I did the first time I did this around. But that does give me, let's try it again over here. Let's see what this does over here. We're going to take that little section. We're going to apply a blur. So let's go to Gaussian blur and then say OK and then deselect. So it just smoothed out that little section. Let's try that again under the eyes here. So maybe this will be a little bit more something you can see. So Command F, which is applies the last blur or filter, and then so that's without, we're not dodging and burning yet. So we're going to fix that dodging and burning later. So that cleans that up. Maybe a little section right here, and there's a little bit rough spot there. Now I might go back and apply a little bit less blur on this. So let's see what happens if we go a little less, about 30. So deselect. So that's pretty good there, pretty good smoothness. Let's try it on this side right here. Command F, Command D. It's subtle, but we're working in small little increments here. And that is the way you retouch. It's just not trying to do it all in one. That took out that little flaw there. Let's try this. Maybe just right along here. Not a whole lot there. Maybe this little section right there. So I think you get what I'm doing here. Just little by little I'm going around and fixing little spots. So let's try down here because we got some serious problems with her right along here. Let's try this. Command, this one I might want a little bit more. So let's go back to my Gaussian blur. And let's, maybe not. Let's be careful. Let's go try about 23. So we deselect. Yeah, we don't want to do it too much. So let's try this part. Command F, Command D. And maybe in here. Command F, Command D. Ooh, that might be too much. So let's back that out. We're going to add our own blur. That's a little less. So let's go down to about 10, somewhere around 9. So deselect. The arm, I think, could use a little bit of this. So let's go down here. And let's do our own. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. Maybe bring it up just a little bit. Now, I haven't done any dodge and burning yet. And I clean that up. Clean this up. Whoop, we don't want to go into the shirt, or deselect into the material there. Command G, Command F, Command D. How are we doing? So let's take off our black and white. So you can see, let's go down a little bit. I still got a lot of work to do. Obviously, that's some dark shadows. We're going to pick all that and take care of all that. There's some little wobbles there. Maybe a little bit of section there. Let's take a look at that. Let's see what we can do here. We're still on our low, so I'm just going to do this. Let's go up here to blur. Okay, Command D. All right, so let's go up to our dodge and burn. And we're going to go to dodge, set my midtones at 3%. And by me holding down the Alt or the Option key, I can toggle between dodge and burn without having to go back and forth. So I'll show you how I do that. So I'm now in the dodge. So we're going to clean up this. Oh, let's get our black and white layer back on here. And 3% just subtly does it. Now watch what happens. I'm going to take that little, watch what happens when I go, okay, I now want to burn. I just hold the Option key down, and I'm just going to burn a little bit right there. I'm going to dodge, and we're going to dodge there. Let's burn here. So we're going to burn right along there. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just going around, and I'm just taking out all the little wobbles and flaws. Let's smooth this out just a little bit here. And because I'm doing a tutorial, I have, to move a little bit faster. But basically, I just keep, what a lot of times I do is I'll do an area, and then I walk away from it, I move to another side, and then as I start to work, I come back around. So I can, once I come back around, I'll see some things I might have missed. And I always go down really low here. And you can see that when you're really small, things pick up. For example, I can really see this transition here. It's not as smooth as I like. So I'm now dodging, right? And then I'm going to hit the burn and just fill this in just a little bit. Just a touch. And I might have gone too far there, so let's just do that. And by having it smaller, it kind of allows me to see those areas a little bit more. We got some serious problems down here. We can clean all this up, and I did that on the original. And this is going to take a little bit of time. So what I'm going to do is, and you can see when I turn it off, turn it on, that how drastic that is. Turn off the black and white. Turn off, turn on. So let me spend just a little bit of time and kind of work this, because obviously you get the point, and then we'll come right back. All right, I think we're back. Maybe about 10 minutes has gone by. And let's take a look at the dodge and burn. We'll turn it off, on, off, on. So I worked a little bit in here around the neck. Let's see, what else did I do? Cleaned up a little bit around the eyes. We're going to fix that. So let's take the black and white layer or adjustment layer off. And I'm going to go down here a little bit and level. Let's see what happens. Go back up. Looks pretty clean. Again, if I was like on that first one I did, I probably spent maybe a little bit more time. I can see a little bit of a lightness there, or a dark, I'm going to darken this little section right there. Sometimes when you have the black on white, you don't see certain things because it's more of a color related. And I'm colorblind, by the way, so you know, I hope most of you guys know that. So my retouching, sometimes it gets a little bit of a challenge when it comes to the color. And we're going to adjust the color here in a minute. I'll show you how I do that. And I kind of get away with the retouching or the adjusting the color side of things by doing this. In fact, let's just do it. I'm going to go to Adjustment, Layer, Hue, Saturation. Almost every portrait I do, I always take about a -10 overall saturation. The reds, I'll take another -10 to 15, and the yellows the same way. So let's turn that off. So it cleans up the skin. At least for me it does. And again, that's my personal preference as an artist. And if you think, well, look, I lost the color in the eyes, all you have to do is go over here, get a black brush, go 100%, and then just paint back the eyes. Perfect. So that brings back the eyes a little bit. In fact, we can adjust those in a minute. We're going to do a little adjustments on the eyes. And I'll show you how I do that. So at this point, why don't we take and do a stamp, Shift Command Option E, and I'm going to take out this little flaw over here. So let's get my stamp tool and let's clean that up. Way too much. Let's take our percentages down here. And then we got to grab right up on that area there. Okay, so we can zoom in a little bit here. See how we're looking. It looks pretty clean. I did a little bit more work on the forehead, maybe about 3 minutes. I took that multiply, a high layer, and clean that up. And again, I want to keep some texture there. I don't want to go too far. So I think we're looking pretty good here, at least for this tutorial, because I can't spend 30 minutes on this or an hour. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to show you one little other trick I do all the time, which is Command J. So I got two exact duplicate layers. Run the opacity to about 50%. Go over here to my patch tool. And now what I can do is if I've got an area like this, let's just take this. Let's say that distracts my eye. Well, I can now grab it, pull it over here, and it's 50% of the strength. So if we go 100%, it disappears. I don't want that. I still want to show it there, but I don't want this full strength. So I can, let's say I like that strength, I can come back here, maybe pull a little bit of that, a little bit of that. Now be careful on this because, again, we don't want our model to have skin that looks like mush. But I can take little areas here, oops, and just clean up things I couldn't quite get. This does a little bit bigger section, so once again, be careful. You don't overdo it. But it's a great little trick to just, oh, see, you gotta be careful. Make sure where you pull it. All right, that looks pretty good. So that looks pretty darn good. Let me go small. See if there's anything that stands out. There's a little wobble right there. Let's clean that up. I think that works. And apart from that, I think it looks pretty good. So I will merge these down because that's not a whole lot of difference between those two. In fact, let's go back and take it off, on, off, on. Just subtly adjusted a few things there. At this point, I might do a vignette. So let's take an adjustment layer with levels. We're going to go over here to my gradient tool. We're going to go to the the little circular one, which is called the radial gradient. And we're going to go and click from the center out. And it creates a black mask with a black center hole punched through the middle. And now all I have to do is take my gradient tool down. Now you can see it starts to do some like stair stepping. So to get around that, I'm going to add a little bit of noise to it. So let's go to add noise. And boom, that little stair stepping is gone. Okay, that looks pretty good. Still has a little bit. I could probably apply that one more time. So let's go filter, add noise. It'll double the strength there. What else? Eyes. Let's take the eyes. So let's go do another levels. There are a lot of ways we can do the eyes, but this is kind of how I do it. We're going to go to levels. We're going to go to brush. My brush is at black, 100%. And I'm going to go in here to soft brush. So let's bring it all the way over to softness. And we're going to paint inside the eye here. Now you don't see what's going on necessarily. We just know that we're punching a hole through it. You'll see it up here on my mask. You should see it. So we're 100%. Brush black should be there. It's going to be pretty small. You may not see it over here. Yeah, you see it very subtly there. But I know it's there. Now watch. I come over to my mid-range. Whoa, 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 whoa. We want to tag it. Well, it should be fine. Tag it. Let's see here. You got my levels. I got, you know I did it wrong? All right, see? The good news is I'm not perfect. We don't need a clipping path on here. Let's take it off. I wanted to invert that. And now, let's take and click on there so we can adjust. So I inverted it so now only the eyes are being adjusted. I don't know why I wasn't thinking there. So let's go to do the levels though. Be really careful here. So what I do is I go down and make it pretty small. And then what I do is, let's go back to 100% here. Oops. That's what it was, right? So no, there's no change. I'm going to bring my highlights up a little bit. Again, be very careful. So if I do that, that looks totally fake. And that's where my histogram tells me, right? My histogram says to go there, which is not going to be accurate. So let's go down here. We're going to clean those eyes up a little bit. Maybe take my midtones over just a fraction. Let's come back a little bit. And then I blow it up, take a look at it, take it back down. Probably still went too far. So let's take this down a little bit. That might be about right. Now, because this is on a adjustment layer, I can go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and sure enough, if I don't like it, I can readjust it. As long as I have that there. Okay, so we got our little vignette, we've got our eyes. The overall levels. Now, I'm making a lot of levels here, so you know, you gotta be careful. You don't get too many adjustments here. But I'm going to take the overall contrast up just a fraction here. Maybe right about there. Just to smooth that skin out a little bit. And maybe take the midtones down just a fraction there too. That looks pretty good. So again, I think I can maybe fix the hair a little bit here, clean this up. And normally how I do that is I'll get my brush or my stamp tool. Let's go 50-50. Let's see what happens. Zoom in here a little bit. Make the brush a little bit harsher. And then step outside here and just start to clean this up. Those stray hairs. You gotta be careful it doesn't look too retouched. So you might go up here and clean a few of these up in here. Here's one that's sticking out there. usually whatever kind of distracts my eye. And then there's a couple here that are kind of just slightly showing up. And if I want to get really close to the skin, I got to be careful. I usually blow it up. Let's go in here really close. And we can just clip right in here, clean that up. Here's a couple. Now you could spend a couple hours working on a retouched skin. Personally, my limit for a non-composite is maybe an hour and a half. A composite I do about 3 hours of retouching. That's my limit. Your limit could be different. And that's the beauty of how we work life, is that we all have a different attention span. And so build a body of work that's based, or look that's based on your attention span. If you don't like to retouch on one image for 3 days, don't do it. I talked to a retoucher recently, just spent 300 hours on one image. All right, so there you have it. I think that's a pretty good, again, there's a few little things I'd fix, but I think that's a pretty clean retouch. I might go in here and take out a little bit of that wobble, clean that line up just a little bit. You don't want to take too much of this away because then it looks fake, because we all have a little bit of a party line kind of underneath the eyes there. And it depends on your end result, who your client is. So there you have it, beauty headshot from start to finish. Thank you guys for joining me, and take a look at my other start to finish tutorials that I'm releasing, and hopefully something there will grab your attention.